The first thing I remember that day wasn't the music or the flowers. It was the look on my son's face, that tight, practiced smile he used whenever he was ashamed of me. He didn't have to say a word, his eyes said enough. "Don't make a scene, Mom," they warned, even before his lips moved. But I already knew the script. I had rehearsed my silence for months. I was supposed to sit quietly in the back row, pretend to be proud, and swallow the bitter taste of being forgotten. And maybe I would have if not for that little card that showed up in my mailbox 3 weeks ago, the wedding invitation that broke the last piece of my heart. My name is Marjorie Ellis, and I'm 63 years old. I've lived my entire life in Atlanta, Georgia, on the same street where the trees shed their leaves like clockwork and the neighbors still wave even if they don't mean it. I'm a retired nurse, 35 years in scrubs, tending to strangers, holding dying hands, and coming home to raise my only son, David. David was my miracle baby. I had him late, at 32, after 2 miscarriages and a doctor who said I'd probably never conceive. My husband, Ronald, passed when David was 12, a heart attack while fixing the kitchen sink. After that, it was just me and my boy against the world. I worked double shifts, sometimes triple, to keep a roof over our heads. He was bright. Oh, that child was brilliant. Top of his class, polite, and full of dreams. Everyone said, "That boy's going to make you proud one day." And he did. Or at least I thought he did. It started small. Phone calls that got shorter. Visits that grew fewer. The last time he came by before the wedding, it wasn't to see me. It was to ask for money. "Mom," he'd said, his tone gentle, like he was speaking to a patient, "I need to cover some medical bills. It's temporary, I promise. I'll pay you back." I didn't hesitate. I wired him $15,000 that same day. That was nearly all my savings, money I'd tucked away for my own hip replacement someday. But I told myself, he's my son. If he needs help, he'll always get it. That's what mothers do, right? We give. Even when it hurts. Then, silence. Weeks turned into months. No calls. No thank you. Nothing. Until that envelope, heavy, perfumed, and embossed with gold, arrived in my mailbox. "Mr. and Mrs. Price cordially invite you to celebrate the marriage of their daughter, Charlotte, to Mr. David Ellis." Charlotte. That name alone made my stomach twist. I'd met her once, briefly, when she and David were still dating. She was polite in the way rich girls are polite, with a smile that never reached her eyes. She'd taken one look at my thrift store curtains and my worn couch and said, "It's so quaint here." I remember thinking, she's not used to seeing things that aren't polished. And now she was marrying my son. When I called David to congratulate him, he sounded like he was reading from a script. "Thanks, Mom. Yeah, it's all happening fast. Charlotte's parents are handling most of it." "I see," I said softly. "When's the big day?" He hesitated. Next month." "Oh, and Mom, one thing." "Yes, baby? Please don't make a scene at the wedding. Charlotte's family is really traditional. Just sit quietly, okay? No drama." No drama. Those words echoed in my head for days. They were heavy with meaning, not just a request, but a warning. Like I was some embarrassment to be managed, not a mother to be honored. I told myself to let it go. I even laughed it off when my friend Gladys said, "Girl, they better be lucky you even show up after that." But inside, something in me cracked. Still, I went shopping for a dress. A simple navy blue one. Nothing flashy. I figured that would please them. When Charlotte's mother, Evelyn Price, called me out of the blue to help coordinate outfits, I foolishly thought it was an olive branch. But it wasn't. It was an evaluation. She met me at a boutique in Buckhead. All glass walls and white floors that made me feel like I'd stepped into a refrigerator. She looked me up and down, smiling that smile rich women use when they're hiding judgment. "I just wanted to make sure your dress complements our color palette," she said sweetly. "We're going for champagne and ivory." "Well, I was thinking something blue," I replied. My late husband loved me in blue. Her smile stiffened. "Blue might clash a little, dear." Then the sales clerk came over, glanced at me, and asked, "Are you here to help Mrs. Price pick out a mother of the bride dress?" Evelyn didn't correct her. She just smiled. I stood there, my cheeks burning, and something inside me whispered, "Don't you dare cry here." When I got home that night, I sat on my bed and stared at the wedding invitation again. My son's name printed in gold, next to a family that clearly saw me as less than. I whispered to myself, "You told me not to make a scene. You don't know who you're talking to, child." But even then, I wasn't planning revenge. I just wanted peace. That peace vanished 2 days later when I opened my email and saw a transaction alert, $15,000 withdrawn from my account. I'd seen it before, but now, next to it, a forwarded receipt caught my eye. Reservation confirmation, the Maldives private water villa, 7 nights, paid in full by D. Ellis. I froze. My hands started to shake. Medical bills? My son's emergency had been a honeymoon. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, until the tears came, slow and heavy, like rain on a roof you can't repair. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. The cold phone calls, the careful distance, the way he flinched when I hugged him last Christmas, like affection was an inconvenience. I had sacrificed everything for that boy. I went without new shoes for years, so he could have his first laptop. I skipped my own doctor appointments to pay his tuition. I worked overtime to send him to college while my hands ached from old needle scars. And now, I was the burden he didn't want to claim. Sometime before dawn, I made a decision. I pulled out my old wooden box, the one that held decades of memories. Inside were photo albums, receipts, letters from David, and old report cards with my notes on the back. "So proud of you, baby." I stacked them neatly beside my bed and started sorting through the papers. The bank transfer record, the date of his request, the day I sent it, all proof that I had been more than a mother. I had been his safety net, his foundation, his quiet provider. And he thought I would just stay silent. When morning came, I brewed my coffee, black and strong, and called him. "Morning, sweetheart," I said gently. "Hey, Mom," he replied, sounding distracted. "Everything okay?" "Oh, everything's fine," I said. "I was just thinking about your wedding. You know, I'm really looking forward to it." He sighed in relief. "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate that. I know things have been complicated." "Oh, don't worry," I said, my tone steady. "I'll be there. And I promise no drama." He chuckled lightly. "Thank you. That means a lot." We hung up, and I smiled, not out of malice, but out of clarity. For the first time in years, I felt calm, like I finally knew what I needed to do. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. The truth that mothers like me, women who gave and gave until our hearts were empty, deserve to be seen, to be respected, to be remembered not as burdens, but as the reason our children stand tall in the first place. So yes, I was going to that wedding. I was going to sit quietly in that room full of people who thought my worth could be measured by the label on my dress. And when the time was right, I'd remind them all, politely, gracefully, and permanently, that I was never the one to be ashamed of. Because sometimes silence is mistaken for weakness.
But mine?
Mine was the calm before a very necessary storm. If you're feeling this story so far, if it touches something deep or reminds you of your own sacrifices, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next chapter. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to know which part of the world you're listening from. The mirror didn't lie, it never did. It showed every wrinkle, every sigh etched into my skin from years of holding back words I wanted to say. The boutique lights were too bright, the kind that expose everything you'd rather keep hidden. I stood there in a navy blue dress, simple but elegant, the kind of thing I thought would be safe. But from the way Charlotte's mother, Evelyn Price, looked at me, you'd think I'd shown up wearing a trash bag. She clapped her manicure hands together and said, "Oh, Mrs. Ellis, it's nice. But perhaps something lighter? The theme is champagne and ivory. We wouldn't want you to stand out too much." Her voice had that southern sweetness that stung like a bee. Behind her, Charlotte scrolled through her phone, half listening, pretending to be kind. I caught her reflection in the mirror. Perfect posture, smooth skin, hair laid down like she stepped out of a magazine. She looked every bit the fairy tale bride. And my son was marrying her. I swallowed my pride. "This one's fine," I said quietly. "It's not about me anyway." Evelyn smiled like a woman who'd just won a battle no one else noticed. "You're right, dear. It's about the children." The sales clerk came over holding a sequined beige gown that looked like it cost more than my car. Maybe this would flatter her figure, the girl said to Evelyn, not to me. Evelyn's eyes sparkled. "Yes, that could work, if we can adjust the waist. Mrs. Ellis, would you like to try it on?" I looked at the tag. $2,000. "No, thank you," I said. "I already have something." The clerk hesitated. "Oh, I just thought." Evelyn cut in smoothly. She prefers something simple. She's very down to earth. Down to earth. That phrase landed like a slap. I smiled anyway. Years of being a nurse had taught me how to hold a calm face while bleeding inside. I nodded politely, went back into the dressing room, and shut the door behind me. Inside that little cubicle, I exhaled hard. The walls felt close. My chest burned with the kind of anger that doesn't come out as shouting, it comes out as silence. I looked at my reflection again and whispered, "You don't belong here, do you?" But then I corrected myself. "No, they don't deserve you." When I came out, Charlotte and Evelyn were giggling about the floral arrangements. I gathered my purse. "Thank you for your time," I said. "I think I'll head out now." Evelyn didn't bother to stop me. "Of course, dear. We'll see you at the rehearsal dinner." Charlotte looked up long enough to say, "Thanks for coming, Mrs. Ellis. Oh, and please remember, the photographer will be doing family portraits, so if you could." I raised my eyebrow. "Wear something that won't ruin the aesthetic?" Her smile faltered. "Oh no, that's not what I meant." I just nodded and walked away. The bell on the boutique door jingled behind me as I stepped into the humid Atlanta afternoon. I felt the weight of something bitter in my chest, the kind of weight you can't breathe around. I sat in my car for a long time, watching traffic pass. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I wasn't crying. I'd run out of tears years ago. But I could feel the humiliation sitting on my shoulders like a heavy coat. I pulled out my phone and called Gladys. "Lord, Marge, you sound like you've been fighting somebody," she said as soon as she heard my voice. "Not fighting," I replied softly. "Just standing still while they throw stones." Gladys hissed through her teeth. "What did they say this time?" I told her about the boutique, the dress, the tone. "Girl, don't you go to that wedding," Gladys said. "If they want to erase you, let them do it without your presence." I smiled sadly. "That's my son's wedding, Gladys. I can't not go." "Yes, you can," she said sharply. "You think Jesus attended every supper he was invited to? Sometimes peace comes from staying home." I laughed through my pain. "You're quoting scripture at me now? Somebody's got to talk sense into you. You've done enough for that boy. He's a grown man now, and if he lets that girl's mama talk to you like that, he's lost his way." I didn't answer, because deep down I knew she was right. But mothers don't walk away, even when it hurts, even when they're not wanted. When I got home, I made tea, the same way I always did when I needed to calm my nerves. But the calm didn't come. Instead, I heard my son's voice again, echoing in my head. "Don't make a scene." What did he think I'd do? Throw a tantrum? Embarrass him? After all these years, after everything I'd done for him, that was what he thought of me. The phone rang just as I sat down. It was David. "Hey, Mom," he said, cheerful in that fake way people sound when they're avoiding guilt. "You met with Charlotte's mom, right?" "I did," I replied evenly. "Lovely woman." He laughed nervously. "Yeah, she can be particular. I just wanted to thank you for being cooperative. Charlotte really appreciates it." I could feel my jaw tighten. Cooperative. He hesitated. "I just mean you're helping everything go smoothly. You know how these things can be." I closed my eyes. "Yes, I do. I also know what it feels like to be treated like you don't belong at your own child's wedding." He sighed. "Mom, please don't start." "I'm not starting anything." I cut in. I'm finishing. Just remember, David, when you stand up there in your tux and everyone claps, the woman you're ashamed of is the one who paid for that suit, that degree, that life you're showing off." He went silent. I could hear him breathing on the other end. Finally, he said, "Mom, don't ruin this for me." I laughed softly. "Ruin? You already did that yourself." Then I hung up.
My tea had gone cold.
That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing the floor, my thoughts like restless ghosts. Every time I tried to lie down, another memory surfaced. His first day of school, his graduation, the way he used to fall asleep on my shoulder after nightmares. I kept seeing his little boy face in my mind, and it hurt because I didn't recognize the man he'd become. Around midnight, I sat at my old desk and opened my laptop.
I don't even know why.
Maybe I wanted distraction. Maybe I wanted to look up wedding etiquette, see if there was something I was missing. Instead, what I found was something else entirely. A forwarded email from my bank, sitting unopened in my inbox. Subject line: Transaction confirmation. Travel payment processed. My heart sank. I clicked it open, and there it was, a payment for a luxury resort in the Maldives. Under the payer's name, D. Ellis. I froze. My hands went numb. I scrolled through the receipt. Private villa, ocean view, champagne welcome package. Total cost $15,000. The same amount I'd wired him months ago for medical bills. I sat there for nearly 5 minutes, staring at the screen. Then something inside me cracked open. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was heartbreak, so sharp it left me dizzy. I got up, went to my bedroom, and pulled out the small wooden box under my bed. Inside were all the moments of my motherhood, photos, receipts, letters, his report cards. Proof of a lifetime of love and sacrifice. I touched each one like a wound. Then I whispered to the empty room. "So that's how you repay me, huh? You take what I bled for and spend it on someone else's dream." I sank into my chair and covered my face. For the first time in years, I let myself cry, not quietly, but deep, aching sobs that tore through me. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what it represented: betrayal, forgetfulness,
shame.
By dawn, my eyes were swollen, but I was clear-headed. I called Gladys again. She answered on the second ring, her voice rough with sleep. "Marge, what happened?" I told her. Everything. The money, the honeymoon, the lies. She whistled low. "That boy done lost his damn mind." "I guess so." "So, what you gonna do?" "I don't know yet," I said quietly. "But I know one thing. I'll be at that wedding. Front row. Marjorie." "No." I cut her off. "I need to be there. I want them all to see me. I won't yell, I won't cry, but they'll remember me." Gladys was silent for a long time. Then she sighed. "You're planning something, ain't you?" I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Not a scene. A statement. After we hung up, I spent the morning gathering papers, bank statements, proof of transfers, anything that told the truth. I placed them neatly in a brown envelope and slipped it into my purse. Then I went to the closet and pulled out my old jewelry box. I hadn't worn earrings in years, but that day I held up a pair of gold studs Ronald had given me before he died. "He'd want me to wear these," I murmured. I put them on and looked at my reflection. The woman staring back at me wasn't defeated. She was calm, composed, dangerous in her quietness. I thought about David's words again. "Don't make a scene." And I laughed softly to myself. "Oh, baby," I whispered, "you have no idea what a scene really is." Outside, the morning light streamed through my curtains, soft and golden. Somewhere in the distance, a wedding bell chimed. I poured myself another cup of coffee and watched the steam curl into the air. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew this much. I was done being invisible. I would walk into that wedding not as someone to be pitied, but as the woman who built the man they were celebrating. And before the night ended, everyone in that room would know exactly who paid for their fairy tale. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I wasn't going to shed a tear. I was just going to tell the truth and let the truth do what it does best. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. A dangerous, quiet kind of peace. The kind that comes right before the storm. I could still feel the echo of that night, the way Marcus's voice rose in anger, the way my own son looked at me like I was the embarrassment he'd been trying to hide for years. That memory burned through me as I sat in my quiet kitchen the next morning, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. The house was too still, no laughter, no sound of the old Motown records I used to play on Saturdays. Just silence and the steady ticking of the clock above the sink. I stared at the half-drawn curtains, light spilling through like a reminder that the world kept turning, even when mine felt like it had stopped. After that argument, Marcus stopped calling. For days, I'd check my phone, hoping for a text that never came. I tried convincing myself that maybe he just needed space. Maybe the wedding stress had gotten to him. But deep down, I knew better. My son wasn't the type to cool off and come back around. He was the type to build walls and never look back. That Sunday, I decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. The air was warm and sticky, and the scent of barbecue drifted from a few backyards. Families were laughing, kids running through sprinklers, the kind of peace I used to dream of for Marcus. Every step I took reminded me of how far I'd gone to make his life easier. The overtime shifts at the hospital, the night classes I took to keep my nursing license active after his father died, the sacrifices that left me too tired to think about myself. I stopped by the community church, the one I'd been attending for 30 years. Pastor Linda was outside, watering the flowers. She looked up, smiling that gentle, knowing smile she always had. "Clara, I was just thinking about you," she said. "I bet you were," I murmured, trying to smile back. She tilted her head. "You look heavy, baby. What's weighing on you?" I hesitated, then sighed. "It's Marcus. We had a falling out." "Over what?" "His wedding." I paused, glancing at the ground. "He doesn't want me to make a scene. Said I should just show up, smile, and let his fiancé's family do all the talking." Pastor Linda frowned. "After all you've done for that boy?" I nodded, biting my lip. "He said they're covering most of the expenses now. Said I should be grateful to even be invited." Her face softened with sympathy. "You've been more than a mother to that child, Clara. You've been his rock. Don't let his pride make you question your worth." I smiled weakly, but inside, I felt something stir, a quiet anger mixed with heartbreak. Maybe that was the problem. I'd been his rock for so long that he thought I'd never move, never crack, never remind him what I'd done to get him where he was. When I got home, I walked into Marcus's old room. It still smelled faintly like the cologne he used as a teenager. On the dresser sat his graduation photo, him in his cap and gown, smiling so wide, I could almost forget how tight money had been that year. I'd sold my wedding ring to pay for his final semester at college. He never knew that, and I never told him because I didn't want him to feel guilty. I just wanted him to succeed. But standing there now, looking at that photo, I realized something painful. I'd raised him to be strong, but I hadn't taught him to be grateful. A week passed before I got another call from Jasmine, his fiancée. Her voice was cool, polite, the kind that smiled without ever showing teeth. "Mrs. Lewis," she began, "Marcus told me you were concerned about the wedding details. I just wanted to assure you that everything's handled." I forced a pleasant tone. "I'm sure it is. I was only wondering if there's anything you'd like me to contribute to. Maybe flowers or food." "Oh no," she cut in quickly. "My parents insisted on covering the costs. They said it's a family tradition." I felt a sharp sting in my chest. "I see. But," she continued, "we'd love for you to handle one thing, the blessing before dinner. It's simple and sweet, just a short prayer before the meal. That would mean a lot to Marcus." A prayer. That's what they wanted from me. Not a speech, not a role, not even a seat of honor, just a prayer. Something short and quiet. Something forgettable. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice steady though my throat was tight. When the call ended, I just sat there staring at the wall, replaying her tone in my mind. I wasn't sure what hurt more, being sidelined or realizing my son had let it happen. Later that night, I called my sister, Denise. She was the only person who truly knew what I'd been through for Marcus. "Girl, I don't know how you do it," she said when I told her everything. If that was my child, I'd let him walk himself down the aisle. I laughed bitterly. You know I can't do that. He's still my son. Being your son doesn't mean he gets to treat you like an accessory, she said. You deserve respect, Clara. I don't want to ruin his day, I said quietly. And what about your dignity? Denise pressed. You've been paying for that boy's future since he could walk. Remember when you paid off his student loans? What's he think? Money grows on trees. I hesitated. That was the part nobody knew except me and the loan officer. Marcus had gotten a call about wage garnishment a few years back, and before he could panic, I'd used my savings to clear it. I'd told him it was handled, never mentioning that it had drained my retirement fund. Denise sighed. He's forgetting who his backbone is. Maybe it's time you remind him. Her words stayed with me. I lay awake that night, replaying every moment I'd swallowed my pride for Marcus's sake. Every time I'd let him speak over me. Every time I'd watched him let Jasmine's parents take credit for things I'd quietly done. The next day, I opened the box in my closet, the one I'd labeled Marcus's future. Inside were old receipts, copies of checks, and payment slips from over the years. Hospital bills, tuition payments, even the down payment receipt from the condo Marcus and Jasmine lived in now. My name was on that one, too. I'd helped them qualify for the mortgage by co-signing. As I flipped through the papers, a slow, simmering calm came over me. I realized I didn't need to argue with Marcus or Jasmine. I didn't need to raise my voice or demand gratitude. I just needed to let the truth speak for itself, loudly and at the right moment. That's when I decided I'd give them exactly what they asked for. I'd stay quiet. But when the time came, when the glasses were raised and the toasts were flowing, I'd make sure everyone in that room knew who'd built the life they were celebrating. In the days leading up to the wedding, I carried on like nothing had changed. I bought a soft lavender dress, not too fancy, but elegant enough. I even picked out a gift, a framed photo of Marcus as a baby, held in my arms, his smile so bright it could have lit up the world. When I wrapped it, I slipped something inside the back of the frame, a copy of the loan statement with my signature at the bottom. My quiet little truth, tucked behind the image of a mother's love. The night before the wedding, Marcus finally called. Hey, Ma, he said cautiously. You doing okay? I'm fine, baby, I said, even though my heart felt like glass. I just wanted to make sure there's no misunderstanding tomorrow, he continued. Jasmine's family can be a little formal, and I just don't want you to feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, I repeated softly. You mean like I don't belong? He hesitated. No, nothing like that. You know how they are. They like things a certain way. I could hear the tension in his voice, the same tone he used when he was caught between guilt and pride. I understand, I said, keeping my tone calm. I'll be on my best behavior. Thanks, Ma, he said, relieved. That means a lot. After we hung up, I stared at the phone for a long while, feeling a strange mixture of sorrow and resolve. I'd done my part. I'd raised him right. I'd loved him through every storm. But if he thought he could silence me into invisibility, he was about to learn that even quiet women have a breaking point. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I took a long shower, did my hair, and put on the lavender dress. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a bitter woman. I saw someone who had lived, sacrificed, and finally found her voice. I pinned on the small gold brooch Marcus had given me for Mother's Day years ago, back when he still called me Mama instead of Mom. It felt like a promise I'd kept for too long. As I left the house, I whispered to my reflection, You raised a good man. Now it's time to remind him who made him one. The drive to the wedding venue was quiet, but my heart beat steady with purpose. By the time I arrived and saw the crowd, the music, the smiling faces, I knew one thing for certain. When the time came, I wouldn't need to shout. All I had to do was tell the truth. And that truth was going to shake every glass in that room. The wedding was held at an old mansion outside Savannah, one of those places people rent to pretend their love story started with wealth and not loans. The white columns out front shimmered in the sunlight, and the air was thick with the scent of roses, champagne, and self-importance. I arrived early mostly because I couldn't sleep the night before. My stomach was tied in knots, and my mind kept circling around what was about to happen. I told myself I wasn't going to ruin anything. I was simply going to tell the truth when the time was right. When I stepped through the entrance, a young woman in a floral dress handed me a program and smiled politely. "Guest of the groom or bride?" she asked. "Groom," I said, my voice steady. She pointed me toward the seating area near the front. "Perfect. Family of the groom, right?" I nodded, but inside, the word family stung. Because lately, I hadn't felt much like family. The ceremony hadn't started yet, but guests were already buzzing, glasses clinking softly as servers passed out mimosas. Jasmine's parents stood near the altar, all smiles and pearls, greeting guests like they were hosting a royal event. Her mother, Sharon, wore a gold gown that shimmered every time she moved. Her father, Robert, was a tall, polished man with the kind of confidence that comes from money and from knowing people are watching. I found my seat quietly. A few people smiled politely, but most barely looked my way. I could feel it, the subtle distance, the unspoken awareness that I didn't quite belong to their world. My lavender dress suddenly felt too simple, my shoes too practical. I'd once dreamed of attending Marcus's wedding surrounded by love and laughter. But now, sitting there among strangers, I felt invisible. When Marcus walked down the aisle, my breath caught in my throat. He looked so handsome, so much like his father, strong jaw, calm eyes, the same slight nervous twitch in his left hand. My baby, my boy. My heart swelled and broke all at once. Then Jasmine appeared. She looked radiant, I won't lie. The kind of beauty that photographs, well, the kind people gasp at for all the wrong reasons. Her dress was elegant, lace trailing behind her like spilled moonlight. I saw the pride in her parents' faces as she walked down the aisle, and I wondered if Marcus even noticed that they'd stolen the spotlight from him. The ceremony itself was beautiful, rehearsed and hollow. Every vow, every smile, every laugh felt polished and practiced. Marcus's voice wavered slightly when he said, "I promise to honor you," and I wondered if he even realized how many times I'd made that same promise for him, in ways that had cost me pieces of my life. When they kissed, everyone cheered. I clapped softly, the sound small against the ocean of applause. After the ceremony, the guests moved toward the reception hall. It was decorated like something out of a magazine. White drapes, golden cutlery, and a massive chandelier that sparkled over everything like frozen rain. Jazz music floated in the air as servers filled glasses and couples took their seats. I sat at a table near the middle, not the front where Jasmine's family sat, but not the back either. A strategic middle. I wanted to see everything. I noticed Jasmine's mother whispering something to Marcus at the head table. He nodded quickly, then looked in my direction, smiling awkwardly. My heart tightened. That smile, it was the same one he used when he was trying to calm me down before asking for something big. Sure enough, a few minutes later, he walked over. "Hey, Ma," he said softly. "Everything okay? You look beautiful, by the way." "Thank you, baby," I replied, managing a small smile. He hesitated. "Listen, Jasmine's parents are about to do the first toast. They just wanted me to remind you about the blessing later." "I remember," I said. "I won't forget." "Good," he said, relieved. "It means a lot that you're here. I know things have been tense." "Tense is one word for it," I said, meeting his eyes. He sighed. "I just want a day to be perfect." "It will be," I told him. "Don't you worry." He squeezed my hand and went back to the head table. I watched him walk away, and my chest ached. He really believed he was protecting his peace by silencing me. But peace built on lies never lasts. The music softened. Sharon, the bride's mother, stood up and clinked her glass with a silver spoon. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice smooth and commanding, "I'd like to make a toast to new beginnings." The crowd quieted. All eyes were on her as she continued. "Marriage is a beautiful journey, one that takes courage, sacrifice, and faith. We're so proud of our daughter, Jasmine, and so thankful that Marcus has become a part of our family. They've built a life together through hard work and love, and we couldn't be happier to have supported them in every way we could, including their honeymoon. The room erupted in polite applause. My fingers tightened around my glass. Their honeymoon. Supported by them?
No.
Paid for by me. I remembered the day Marcus called, excited about the trip. "Ma, it's a dream package," he said. "All inclusive. Just one problem. The agency needs the payment up front." He hadn't told me Jasmine's parents were handling everything. He'd told me they needed help. And I'd wired the money without hesitation, because that's what mothers do. The applause faded, and Sharon smiled graciously before sitting down. I could feel Marcus's nervous glance flick toward me. He probably saw the set of my jaw, the way I was staring at my untouched plate. But I stayed quiet.
For now.
Dinner began, soft laughter rising around the room. Plates of grilled salmon and roasted vegetables passed by, but I barely touched mine. I could feel something inside me building, like the low rumble before a storm. Then came the second toast, from Jasmine's father, Robert. "To the union of two wonderful families," he said. "To love, success, and gratitude." He paused for effect. "We're especially proud to have guided these two young people into a future filled with stability and opportunity." Guided them? I nearly laughed. My hands trembled as I thought about the stack of documents sitting back home in my closet. The bank statements, the tuition checks, the mortgage forms. Guided didn't begin to describe what I'd done. I had carried that boy's dreams on my back until my knees nearly gave out. When he finished, the applause came again, louder this time. My heart pounded in my chest. I looked at Marcus, and for a brief second, our eyes met. He knew. Oh, he knew. The guilt flickered there, just for a moment. But he quickly turned away. That was the final straw. I placed my napkin neatly beside my plate and rose from my seat. The chatter faded as people noticed me standing. I smoothed my dress, lifted my chin, and said clearly, "If I may, I'd like to say a few words before the blessing." Marcus's face went pale. "Ma, it'll be quick," I said, raising a hand to silence him. The room quieted. Even the music stopped. I took a breath. "First of all," I began, smiling softly, "thank you all for being here to celebrate my son and his lovely wife. It's a blessing to see Marcus find happiness. Lord knows I prayed for this day." A few people smiled politely. I could feel the tension humming in the air. "But I just want to clarify something," I continued, turning my gaze toward Jasmine's parents. "There's been a lot of talk tonight about who supported what, who provided what. And while I don't like to make scenes, I do like the truth." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the payment receipt for the honeymoon, with my name clear as daylight. "This," I said, holding it up, "is the receipt for that beautiful trip to St. Lucia everyone's been applauding about. It came from my savings account. The same savings I used to pay for my son's college tuition, his first car, and part of the down payment on their home." Gasps rippled across the room. Sharon's smile froze mid-expression. Robert shifted in his seat, eyes narrowing. "I don't say this to embarrass anyone," I went on, my voice calm but unyielding. "I say this because too often, the people who sacrifice the most are the ones erased from the story. I wasn't invited to this day to be thanked, or even acknowledged. But I won't stand here and let a lie take root in front of God and everyone." The silence was heavy, thick. All I could hear was the faint clinking of glasses as someone's trembling hand set one down. Marcus finally stood. "Ma, please," he whispered, his voice tight. "You're making a scene." I turned to him, eyes soft but firm. "No, baby. I'm making a memory." I held his gaze for a long moment. The room seemed to shrink until it was just the two of us, the mother who had given everything, and the son who'd forgotten what that meant. "I'm proud of you," I said, voice trembling slightly. "But I need you to remember who helped you stand tall. Because pride without gratitude is just arrogance dressed in a tuxedo." Jasmine looked down at her lap, face pale. Sharon was whispering furiously to her husband. I could feel the judgment from a few guests, but I didn't care. After a moment, I folded the receipt neatly and placed it on the head table beside Marcus's glass. Then I straightened, took a deep breath, and said, "Now, if you'll all bow your heads, I'll give the blessing." It was the quietest room I'd ever prayed in. My voice trembled but carried strong. "Lord, bless this union with honesty, humility, and the kind of love that remembers where it came from. Let no heart here forget the hands that built their blessings."
Amen.
When I finished, no one spoke.
Not even the band.
I turned, picked up my purse, and walked slowly toward the door. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing through the silence. Behind me, whispers began to rise, soft and stunned. Outside, the air was cool and sweet. I looked up at the sky, half expecting thunder. But there was only stillness. For the first time in years, I felt free. Not proud. Not angry. Just free. Because I hadn't come to ruin a wedding. I'd come to reclaim my name. And I knew, from that day forward, none of them would ever forget it. I didn't drive straight home after I walked out of that mansion. My hands were trembling too much to trust the wheel, and my heart was still beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. So instead, I parked under the huge oak tree just past the property gates, switched off the ignition, and sat there in silence. For a long time, I didn't move. I just stared out the windshield, watching the guests drift outside like ants from a shaken nest. A few of them pointed toward my car. I saw one woman whisper something to another, their pearl necklaces catching the evening light. I could imagine the gossip already forming. Can you believe the groom's mother did that? How tacky. How dramatic. Let them talk. For 58 years, I'd been the quiet one, the dependable one, the woman who took double shifts, swallowed her pain, and kept her dignity while people stepped right over it. But that night, for the first time, I'd spoken up, and even though my voice had trembled, it had been heard. Still, sitting there in the quiet, the weight of what I'd done started to sink in. The air was warm, but I felt cold all over. I could almost hear Marcus's voice in my head, the disappointment dripping from his words. "You made a scene, Ma." I wanted to believe I'd done the right thing, but part of me still felt like a mother who'd broken her own child's heart. The sound of hurried footsteps snapped me out of my thoughts. I looked up to see Marcus jogging toward the car, his tuxedo jacket unbuttoned, tie hanging loose around his neck. His face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. I sighed. Of course, I whispered under my breath. He'd come now. He yanked the door open before I could lock it. "Ma, what the hell was that?" I turned to look at him calmly. "That was the truth, Marcus." "No, that was humiliation," he said, voice rising. "You embarrassed Jasmine, her parents, me, in front of everyone." I kept my tone steady. If the truth embarrassed them, then maybe they shouldn't have been lying in the first place. He groaned and ran a hand through his hair. "Do you even realize what you've done? Sharon and Robert are furious. They said you ruined the reception. People were filming, for God's sake." "Good," I said quietly. "Maybe they'll finally see what real sacrifice looks like when the video hits the internet." He froze, blinking at me. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I replied. "Marcus, I've sat back and watched those people take credit for everything I've done for you. I've smiled and nodded while they painted themselves as saviors. But tonight, when they bragged about paying for that honeymoon I funded, I couldn't hold my tongue anymore." He clenched his jaw. "You didn't have to make it public." "Oh, so my years of sacrifice are supposed to stay private while their lies go on display?" I asked. "That's convenient." "Ma." "No." I cut in, my voice sharper now. "You don't get to mommy right now. You stood there and let them talk about their generosity while I sat in that room like a stranger, like some charity case you were ashamed of." His expression softened, but I could see the guilt fighting with pride inside him. "That's not fair. I just wanted peace today. You know how Jasmine's parents are. They can be overbearing." I shook my head slowly. "Peace built on lies never lasts, baby. You should know that by now." He sighed deeply, gripping the top of the car door. "Do you have any idea how hard this is for me? I love you, but sometimes you act like the world owes you something. My chest tightened. Marcus Lewis, I owe the world nothing. I've paid my dues. I've lived for everyone but myself. The only thing I ever wanted was respect from you, most of all. He looked away, staring into the trees. I didn't mean it like that, he muttered. Yes, you did, I said softly. And that's the saddest part. He didn't respond for a long time. The sound of crickets filled the silence between us. Finally, he said, Jasmine's crying inside. Her parents are talking about canceling the honeymoon. They're threatening to pull out of the business deal with the firm. So, they only cared about appearances after all, I said. Not the marriage. Not you. That's not true, he snapped. Isn't it? I shot back. Because if they truly cared about you, they'd respect where you came from. They'd respect me. But they don't, and you've let them. His eyes glistened, and for the first time that evening, I saw my boy in him again. The same kid who used to cry when he scraped his knees. The one who'd hug me so tight, I could barely breathe. I just wanted to build something different, he said quietly. I wanted to give Jasmine the life she deserves. And you think I didn't want that for you? I whispered. Marcus, everything you have, every door that opened, every chance you took, came because I pushed. I scraped. I bled. And I did it so you wouldn't have to bow to anyone. His voice cracked. Then why does it feel like I can't please you no matter what I do? Because you stopped trying to honor where you came from, I said simply. That's not pride, baby. That's denial. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with years of love, hurt, and misunderstanding. Finally, he stepped back from the car. I don't know how to fix this, he said. But you didn't have to do it this way. I started the engine. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop whispering. He stared at me for a moment longer, then turned and walked back toward the mansion, his shoulders slumped. I watched him go until the darkness swallowed him. Then I let out a shaky breath and drove away. When I got home, I kicked off my shoes and sank into the couch. My house felt emptier than ever. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was heavy. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the dark, the events of the evening replaying like a film reel. I thought about Marcus's face, how hurt he looked, how lost. I thought about Jasmine's pale expression and her mother's frozen smile. I wondered if I'd gone too far. But then I thought about all those years, nights spent at the hospital with aching feet, early mornings making breakfast before double shifts, the years of never asking for thanks. Maybe this was long overdue. The next morning, I woke to find my phone buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, texts, social media notifications. Apparently, someone had uploaded a video of the wedding incident, as people were calling it. The caption read, "When Mama refuses to stay silent." I groaned. Lord, have mercy, I muttered, opening one of the links. The video showed me standing there in my lavender dress, holding up that receipt. My voice was calm but firm, and when I said, "I'm not making a scene. I'm making a memory," the room erupted in gasps. That part had gone viral. Thousands of views already. The comment section was split down the middle. "She's a queen. Stand your ground, Mama," one said. "Embarrassing. Could have handled it privately," another replied. "Respect your elders. She built that man. She's just bitter and jealous." I put the phone down, unsure whether to laugh or cry. I hadn't planned on going viral. I just wanted the truth out. But now the whole world had an opinion about me. Around noon, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Marcus was standing there. His eyes were tired, his tie gone, his hair a mess. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I nodded and stepped aside. He sat on the couch, elbows on his knees. "It's bad," he said. "The video's everywhere. My firm called this morning. Jasmine's parents are threatening legal action, something about defamation." I snorted. "Defamation?" I told the truth. "I know," he said softly, "but that doesn't matter to them." We sat in silence for a moment. Then he added, "Jasmine went to stay with her parents last night." My heart sank. "Oh, Marcus." He rubbed his face. I don't even know if she's coming back. For a long time, I didn't say anything. Then I reached over and took his hand. Baby, I'm sorry things had to happen like this. But you can't build your future on people who think the truth is an inconvenience. He looked up at me, his eyes red. I just wanted peace, Ma. I know, I said softly. But peace without honesty isn't peace, it's silence. And silence can choke you. He nodded slowly, tears gathering in his eyes. You're right. I think I forgot who I was trying to be. I squeezed his hand, then start remembering. We sat there like that for a while, mother and son. Two people finally forced to see each other, stripped of pride and pretending. After he left that evening, I stood by the window and watched him drive away. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft gold and pink. I thought about the life ahead, his, mine, the healing still to come. The phone buzzed again with notifications, but I ignored it this time. Let the world talk. Let them debate who was right or wrong. I knew what I'd done, and for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel like apologizing for it. That night, I poured myself another glass of wine, turned on my favorite record, Aretha Franklin's Ain't No Way, and let the music fill the house. My eyes burned, but this time, the tears came from relief. Because maybe, just maybe, speaking my truth had finally set both of us free. By the time I stepped into that wedding hall, I had already made peace with what I was about to do. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of years of silence finally ready to shatter. The soft music, the clinking glasses, the polite laughter, all of it blurred into background noise. My son stood at the altar, smiling that same careful, practiced smile he'd learned from his father. The bride was radiant, her family beaming like they owned the world. And in a way they did, or so they thought. But they didn't know that the foundation beneath all that sparkle was built on me. My years, my sacrifices, my silence. I took my seat quietly near the back, dressed in a soft blue gown I'd worn to hide my grief, more than to look elegant. I wasn't meant to be noticed. My son had made that very clear days before. Mom, he'd said, his voice clipped but polite, please don't make a scene at the wedding. Just come, sit, smile, and leave quietly. He didn't even look me in the eye when he said it. I wanted to ask him, what kind of scene are you expecting me to make? But I swallowed the words, the same way I'd swallowed so many over the years. Because I knew he wasn't afraid of embarrassment, he was afraid of truth. The toasts began, laughter filling the air like perfume. The bride's parents stood, glasses raised, thanking everyone for sharing in their new beginning. They thanked God, their friends, the community that raised such a fine young man like Daniel. Then they smiled toward me with that stiff, performative graciousness people use when they think you should be grateful just to be in the room. And, of course, the bride's mother added sweetly, we're so thankful to Daniel's mother for being part of this wonderful celebration. That was when something inside me cracked. Because there it was again, that subtle erasure, that polite dismissal of everything I had done to get us all to that moment. I thought of the nights I worked double shifts at the nursing home, of the years I'd hidden bills under couch cushions so my son wouldn't see how close we were to losing everything. I thought of how I paid off his student loans, how I quietly wired money for their honeymoon even after he said, Mom, we got it handled. So I stood up, slowly, deliberately, the sound of my chair scraping against the floor sliced through the music. Heads turned. Daniel's smile faltered. Excuse me, I said, lifting my glass. I'd like to make a toast. For a heartbeat, no one moved. I could see Daniel's jaw tighten, the color draining from his face. The bride's parents looked politely curious. Her mother even gave me a little nod, like she was indulging an old woman's sentimentality. I just want to say, I began, my voice steady but low. It's a beautiful thing to see two people starting their lives together. I know what it takes to get here: love, faith, hard work, and sometimes sacrifice. The room was silent now. I could feel the pulse of every eye on me. See, when my son said he wanted to propose, I continued. He didn't have much. He'd just lost his job, his car was barely running, and his savings were gone. But I believed in him. I believed in them. So I helped. Quietly. The ring? I helped with that. The down payment on their house? I helped with that too. And that honeymoon to Italy that the bride's family so graciously posted about online? I smiled faintly, my voice softening but cutting sharper than glass. That was my gift. Every penny. Because that's what mothers do. We build bridges even when they burn us on the way. Gasps rippled through the hall. Daniel's eyes darted around the room, panic setting in. "Mom," he hissed, "please sit down." But I didn't. I had stayed seated for too long. "I'm not saying this to embarrass anyone," I said, turning toward him. "I'm saying this because I realized something tonight. I realized that silence doesn't buy respect. It just buys time for people to forget who you really are." The bride's father shifted uncomfortably. Her mother pressed her lips tight, her eyes darting toward the guests. The whispers began, soft, poisonous little murmurs filling the air like smoke. "Mom, enough." Daniel's voice cracked, his polite mask breaking. "This isn't the time." I looked at him, really looked at him. My son, standing in his tailored suit, looking more like a stranger than the little boy who once held my hand at the bus stop in the rain. "You told me not to make a scene," I said quietly. But maybe the scene needed to be made. I set my glass down and turned to leave. The silence behind me was deafening. As I walked out, I could hear the rustle of dresses, the low hum of whispers. Someone called my name, but I didn't look back. My heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing like punctuation marks to a chapter that had needed ending for years. When I got outside, the cool air hit my face, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. I drove home in silence, the road ahead blurring through the tears I refused to wipe away. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls, messages, voicemails, some from Daniel, some from people I hadn't heard from in years. I ignored most of them. When I finally answered, it was him. His voice was low, tired. "How could you do that, Mom?" he asked. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." "Did I?" I said quietly. "Or did I just remind everyone where you came from?" He sighed heavily. "You made me look like a fool." "I didn't have to do that," I said. "You managed that all on your own when you decided to erase me to make yourself look more polished." He didn't respond for a long time. Then, just before hanging up, he said, "You ruined my wedding." I stared at the phone, my heart breaking and hardening all at once. "No," I whispered to the empty room. I ruined my silence. Days passed. The story spread like wildfire through our small community. Some called me bitter. Others called me brave. The bride's parents demanded an apology. I didn't give one, because for the first time, I didn't owe anyone anything. Then one night there was a knock on my door. It was Daniel. His face was drawn, his eyes rimmed red. He looked smaller somehow, like a child again. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. I stepped aside without a word. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his hands. "Everything's been chaos," he said finally. "Her parents are furious. She's barely talking to me." "I'm sorry for that," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. He looked up. "You really had to do it like that?" "Yes," I said simply. "Because if I told you quietly, you wouldn't have listened. You never do." He swallowed hard. "I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I laughed bitterly. "By telling me not to exist? By hiding me at the back like I'm some shameful secret? No, Daniel. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourself." He looked like he wanted to argue, but the words never came. Instead, he just sat there, his silence saying everything. After a long pause, I poured us both tea. The kind I used to make when he was little and afraid of thunderstorms. He stared at the cup for a long time before whispering, "You paid for so much, Mom." I didn't even realize how much. "I didn't do it to hold it over your head," I said softly. "I did it because I wanted to see you rise. But somewhere along the way, you forgot who built the ladder." Tears filled his eyes. "I'm sorry." I nodded slowly. "I know. That night, when he left, I felt lighter. but not entirely whole. Some wounds don't heal clean. They leave scars that remind you of both pain and power. Weeks later, I got a letter in the mail.
A check.
It was for the exact amount I'd spent on the honeymoon plus interest. In the corner, Daniel had written, "You were right. I should have remembered who taught me to stand tall." I smiled faintly, folded the letter, and tucked it into my Bible. At church the following Sunday, people whispered as I walked by. Some with judgment, some with respect. But I didn't care which. I had found peace in my own truth. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a mother can do isn't to protect her child from the world, but to remind them who gave them the strength to face it. And as I sat there, the sunlight streaming through the stained glass, I whispered a quiet prayer. Not for forgiveness, but for freedom. Freedom from silence. Freedom from being erased. Freedom from carrying everyone else's comfort at the cost of my own dignity. When I closed my eyes, I saw that wedding hall again. The glasses shaking in trembling hands, the shock in their faces, the stillness that followed my truth. And for the first time, I didn't feel regret. I felt seen. I felt whole. I felt
alive.
If this story touched your heart or made you think about the power of a mother's silence finally breaking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And have you ever been in a moment where speaking your truth changed everything?